Okay, everybody. Hi, and welcome to Gilat's Webinar Wednesday. I am Dorit Oren, Director of Product Marketing at Gilat Satellite Networks. And as many of you already know, Gilat is a leading global provider of products and services for satellite-based broadband communication. We are in this business for over 25 years with over 1 million products shipped to more than 90 countries. In today's webinar, we will focus on one of Gilat's strongest areas, cellular backhauling. And this time, I'm excited to present today's webinar topic, Seize the Opportunity for 3G LTE Backhaul with 200 megabits per second TDMA VSAT. I am pleased to be hosting in the webinar today Yoram Ofri, Gilat's Director of Applications and Solutions. I will start out with the changes we are seeing in the market that are bringing new MNO opportunities. These opportunities are causing rapid rural migration to 3G LTE networks. This, of course, raises the question of which satellite backhaul is the best fit. Yoram Ofri then will discuss the satellite backhaul considerations that are required to achieve this new opportunity. The main focus will be on the different access schemes for the download and upload direction, whether it be SEPC-SEPC or TDM-SEPC or TDM and TDMA for the upload direction. Then Yoram will go into a discussion about the changing traffic patterns, from GSM voice traffic to mostly data traffic in 3G LTE networks. He will then explain why the bursty traffic pattern that we see in 3G LTE networks is an excellent fit for the TDM-TDMA access scheme. So we are clearly concluding that bandwidth sharing is a must in both the download as well as the upload direction. I will then go through an example to demonstrate that bandwidth sharing is a must in both directions for an economically feasible solution. Then I'll sum up with Capricorn, our 200 megabits per second TDMA VSAT, and discuss the requirement for TCP acceleration in order to meet the performance needs. So let's move now to slide 3. We're talking here now about the market change. And this market change is bringing MNO opportunity. And there are 7 dimensions of this market change that I would like to discuss. The first one is the ubiquitous smartphone adoption. We're seeing here a fantastic phenomena, the fastest growth in any consumer technology over the history of recorded history of consumer technology. 2 times faster than the internet boom in the 90s and 3 times faster than the recent social network growth. What's so amazing about this phenomena is that it is really worldwide, including the most remote areas. As a matter of fact, LTE smartphones are now available for under $70 due to the second-hand smartphone market. And these phones can reach more than 100 megabits per second download speeds. The next trend I'd like to talk about that is causing a market change, bringing this MNO opportunity, is this shift in voice traffic moving to primarily data traffic. We see here that video traffic is becoming the primary source of data consumption in cellular networks. You can see here on this chart from Sandvine in red the fantastic growth of primarily video that has surpassed the 50% mark already in 2012. And the next market change is the change that we're seeing from the macro cells to the small cells. And this is a very strong economic differentiator or change that we're seeing. And these small cells are now also being used for network expansion in remote areas. I'd like to point out that these remote locations for them previously would have been too expensive to operate with traditional macro cells. And reducing the size and the power requirements of these cells allows these small cells to run on solar power, greatly reducing the capital expenditure. And the fourth trend is directly related to the satellite business and the tremendous opportunity already available with the quickly growing launch of high-throughput satellites. You can see that the additional capacity is mostly in the higher frequency range of Ka, and in addition, the implementation of what we call MSB or multi-spot beams allows for bandwidth reuse, bringing down prices by almost an order of magnitude. See this chart from Euroconsult that discusses the reduction in price trend by region. We can see from the chart that the reduction in price in some regions is from over $2,000 per megahertz per month to as low as we see close to $600 per megahertz per month already in 2014. And on top of this, we expect to see even additional bandwidth price reduction as more and more high-throughput satellites are being launched. So if we summarize this short introduction of the market trends, we can see that there's four market drivers or four market changes that are happening that are causing a rapid rural migration to 3G LTE networks. And of course, from there comes the question, which satellite backhaul technology is the best fit? This satellite technology best fit is going to be discussed shortly by Yoram, and he will then be explaining the bandwidth efficiency is really the key. When providing a satellite backhaul link to 3G LTE base stations, the question of bandwidth efficiency is of utmost importance, as I just said, since the goal is to save money by using the smallest amount of bandwidth that will meet the subscriber's performance needs. Now, this goal can be translated into a technical question, and the question is which access scheme is best fit for download as well as upload direction? Is it SCPC in both directions, or TDM SCPC, or TDM TDMA for the upload? Suitable access scheme is based on several parameters, of course, and that is exactly what Yoram will be pointing out to you. Which application are we talking about? Is it voice or data? What is the cell activity? And of course, the network size. So now I am pleased to be introducing Yoram Orfrey to continue this presentation.
Hello, everybody. We're going to talk now about SCPC and SCPC, meaning that the down direction is download direction is SCPC and the upload direction is SCPC. What does it mean SCPC at all? SCPC refers to a continuous modulated carrier running at fixed speed. You know, if you try to do a speed change, it will cause loss of data because you after you change the speed of this SCPC modem, the receiver on the other side loses the lock, and it takes at least several seconds to lock again, and of course very frequent changes just to adapt to sharing of bandwidth or something like that is actually not possible at all. However, before I go into the efficiency of the SCPC, let's describe how this SCPC came to live in the satellite backhaul for cellular. So in the past, we had a lot of GSM networks, and the operators, the MNO, were trying to connect more and more sites. They used microwave, they used fiber, mostly microwave actually, but when they tried to reach some of the sites, it was too expensive to use microwave, terribly expensive. They had to build towers of 100 meters, and this is not possible or too expensive. So they asked the the satellite communication people, can you provide me a solution? I need E1 from this point to this point. So satellite people were forced to talk in their language and talk about E1 or 2E1 or 3E1, or in the USA talk about T1. And the answer was yes, it can give you a E1 for so much money per month. And they just put a modem at the central site where the BSC is, and another modem at the BTS. And if there was a need for 4 BTS, then they put in the central site, which we call a hub, they put 4 modems, and at the remote they connected 4 BTS, each one with a modem, SCPC modem. So this was simply because of the habit or the knowledge of the transmission people of the MNO, or actually the lack of knowledge of the transmission people of the MNO. They just wanted to talk E1. This is the language they understood from the microwave and even from fiber in the ground. However, it doesn't mean that SCPC is not efficient ever. SCPC is highly efficient when traffic carrying capability of the modem matches the traffic demand by the base station during the busy hour. So if, for example, you have a line of 2 megabits per second and the traffic daily reaches 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 megabits per second, then it's a perfect fit. It's good enough. You put 2 mega, you allow 2 meg, but you have 1.7. It's not too much waste of bandwidth. Now, I tell you also about the carrier in carrier, because some people talk about carrier in carrier as something that saves a lot of bandwidth. In the case of SCPC solutions, carrier in carrier really saves about 30% of the satellite bandwidth. But when we move to HTS, where you transmit from something called a gateway, and then you have spot beams in some other places in the country or in the continent, then the carrier functionality cannot work because it doesn't work in satellites that are defined as cross-strap satellites, and the HTS satellites, all of them or almost all of them are cross-strap satellites. Okay, so let's talk about another solution, which is called TDM SCPC. So in the previous one, we had SCPC in both directions, and there were independent SCPC modems at the central site. So here we have just one type of box or hub transmitting, just one transmitter at the central site that transmits to everybody at the remote. So and each one at the remote is accepting the traffic belongs to it according to the address or some code in the header that tells this is yours. The term TDM stands for time division multiplexing, and actually it refers to the statistical multiplexing of packets destined to all remote base stations. So there's one big carrier, let's say 4 megabits per second or 10 megabits per second, and the traffic direction to each BTS or each node B is actually changing very rapidly. 1 second the traffic to the node B will be 200 kilobits per second only, and part of a second later or a second later it will be 20 megabits per second to the remote, and then 30, and then half a megabits per second. So it's changing very fast in the BTS or in the node B. However, if we look at the total, especially if we have 100 remote sites or 1,000 node Bs, then the total traffic to the remote sites is very stable. Why? Well, this is according to the rule or to the low of the large numbers. In large numbers, and when we talk about 100 sites or 1,000 sites, these are large numbers, the statistics we have like that the deviation from the average is small. So that's why we can choose a common carrier. Normally it's DVB S2 carrier or modulator with a code and modulation which is defined for the link. In this example, now let's move to the upload direction. In this example, TDM SCPC, the direction to the central site is SCPC, which means, again, that it's a fixed bandwidth from each node B. Let's say 1 megabits per second, or let's say 2 megabits per second, but this 2 megabits per second doesn't change. It's 2 megabits per second all the way to the RNC. The RNC is near the hub. The hub is where the large antenna is. So the traffic goes 2 megabits per second from one side, 2 megabits per second in the other side, etc. Now, I remind, the traffic in the node B changes daily very fast. I mean, in seconds, it will change from half mega to 1 mega to 0.1 megabits per second, etc. But you allocate fixed bandwidth of 2 megabits per second. So this approach seems not necessarily the right one, except for the cases where you have voice traffic from the remote, and it's a large cell, large BTS cell. Then the traffic in the busy hour daily, even in the upload direction, is very stable. Again, as I explained earlier, with the law of the large numbers. But now I talk about large number. It's large number of mobile handsets that allow this TDM SCPC in the upload direction to be efficient. Now, most of the VSAT vendors, they use TDM in the download direction. Many of them also use TDMA, which will be the next slide, also use, but but we don't see so much SCPC. So let's talk about the last one, the access scheme number 3, TDMA. In TDMA, first of all, what does it mean, TDMA? TDMA stands for Time Division Multiple Access. Actually, it is more correct to say MF TDMA, which stands for Multi-Frequency Time Division Multiple Access. So it refers actually to a frequency and time allocation of bandwidth in response to signaling messages that request bandwidth from a central site, from the hub, from a processor at the central site. They request bandwidth because they notice that there's more traffic over the LAN port of the VSAT, which is coming from the node B. They notice more traffic, they request more bandwidth. If they notice less traffic, they release more bandwidth. So the requests go to the central site. The central site allocates bandwidth, and they use time slots in frequency. So that's why it's called frequency and time multiple access. TDMA is very efficient when the upload traffic is very bursty. And we will come to discuss that it is very bursty. We will talk about it later. Okay, so let's summarize the 3 solutions, see where each one fits. So I would say that for GSM networks, all 3 access schemes may be suitable. However, let me say that if the normal BTS is carrying very low traffic, which is sometimes the case, especially with subsidized projects, when we talk about half Erlang per site in the busy hour, 1 Erlang, 2 Erlang, this is ridiculous traffic. Again, if you just put SCPC for that, this would be very bandwidth consuming solution. But if the cells are large cells, then SCPC in the upload direction is also a good solution. For sure, for the small BTS cells, for the small GSM cells, the access scheme, number 3, TDMA is the right one, and TDM also in the download direction is a very good solution. However, when we talk about a LTE or 3G, which has a lot of data traffic, the picture changes significantly, and we talk about it in the next slides. So let's talk about a high 3G, LTE. These networks are actually data intensive, meaning the data traffic is composed of mostly data, and the ratio between voice and data is such that the voice part in terms of bandwidth is negligible, relatively negligible. The traffic pattern is totally different from GSM because the data traffic, the bytes per site, change very rapidly. Why? It can change from 100 megabits per second in a minute or part of a second, and after another part of a second, it can go down to less than 500 kilobits per second. I was talking about 100 mega, and now talk about 0.5 mega in parts of a second. Why? Because whatever you download, you request, or several people, 3 people were requesting to download something from the network, let's say a video clip, but after very short time, because working 100 megabits per second, after a very short time, this was downloaded and finished, gone. Also, if you upload some pictures, some video clip that you took yesterday, you upload that and you upload at a very high speed, then again it is gone after a very short time. So we talk about a peak traffic of larger than 100 megabits per second, and you can see it in this diagram in front of you. And the average is less than 1 megabits per second. So this is totally different case than what we talked about when we talked about voice. So TDMA is the perfect fit for 3G and LTE satellite backhaul. LTE backhaul carries very high speed, larger than 100 megabits per second per site, while being very efficient as long as we use TDM in the download direction and we use TDMA in the upload direction. Data is bursty, so sharing is possible with TDM and TDMA. By having TDM in the download direction, we allow to put all the traffic to all node Bs in the same large carrier. So even if the traffic per site changes very fast, the total traffic accumulated is a very stable, very small deviation from the average. And in the upload direction, it's the same story. The request for time slots is changing very fast in each VSAT that connects to the node B, changing very fast from high to low traffic. But the total of all the node Bs, the VSAT with all the node Bs, is tending to be relatively stable.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yoram. So is TDMA the only option for 3G LTE satellite backhaul? Well, absolutely yes, a very definitive yes. And what I'd like to do is actually walk us through an example to understand that the feasibility of any other solution is completely ridiculous. So let's take this example slowly. So for 3G LTE bandwidth sharing is a must, we're saying in both directions. So let's look at an example with a cell capacity of 100 megabits per second download and 10 megabit per second upload. And let's take here on the left-hand side an example of SCPC, and on the right-hand side TDM, TDMA, where the contention ratio is 1 to 100. So if we look here at the left-hand side for 1,000 cells, we're talking about 100 gigabits per second over 10 gigabits per second for the upload. Now when we look at the contention ratio of the TDM of 1 to 100 and the TDM, TDMA, we see here for the 1,000 cells 1 gigabits per second for the download and 0.1 gigabit per second for the upload. Now let's translate this into gigahertz. So if we look here on the left-hand side, again at the SCPC model, we see here with a ratio of 1 to 2 from the gigabits per second to the gigahertz, so for 100 down to 50 gigahertz for the download. And with a ratio of 1 to 1 for the upload, we see 10 gigabits per second changing to 10 gigahertz for the upload. So this is the space segment you see here in blue for the SCPC. Now let's see what happens on the TDM, TDMA side when the contention ratio is 1 to 100. We saw 0.5 gigahertz for the download and 0.1 gigahertz for the upload. Let's see what that means now here graphically. We can see here that the download is, of course, very, very small, 0.5 gigahertz, and the upload is 0.1 gigahertz, both at a ratio of 1, of course, to 100. So we're talking about obviously a significant dollar saving in the space segment in both the download and the upload. Now granted, the download is much larger than the upload in terms of the space segment utilization. However, let's look specifically only at the upload direction and see if this is significant. And we will see that it is very significant, and that's why we're saying that sharing is really important and a must in both directions, not only in the download but also in the upload direction. So let's see what happens. If we talk about annual bandwidth saving of 10 gigahertz, because we have 10 gigahertz here of the upload with the SCPC, and it's come down to 0.1 gigahertz with the TDMA. So we're looking here at annual bandwidth saving of 10 gigahertz, and this reduces the cost from $60 million to $600,000 when we talk about $500 per megahertz per month. So this is the annual savings that we see. Quite fantastic. So we clearly see that SCPC is not an option for 3G LTE satellite backhaul, not only because we are lucky to see that the traffic pattern is so amenable to TDM, TDMA, but it's ridiculously expensive and not economically feasible to use any other solution but TDM, TDMA. So we're definitely concluding bandwidth sharing is a must in both directions. And let's now see another important point, and that is about the fact that the currently available TDMA VSATs are simply not fast enough. So after we've established that it has to be TDMA, let's see if we have the correct performance. And current TDMA VSATs that we see on the market are quite slow. And what we're seeing now with the new product that's coming from Gilat, it's SkyEdge-2C Capricorn, that has a performance of 200 megabits per second. And this is the requirement that we see to be able to answer the LTE speeds and the requirement for the fast performance that the smartphones are now requiring in the data applications. And Capricorn, the TDMA VSAT from Gilat, overcomes an additional satellite backhaul challenge, which is very important. And let me explain this just briefly at a high level. And we're talking here about the fact that when we look at terrestrial backhaul, we see that the terrestrial backhaul meets the smartphone maximum speed of 100 megabits per second. But what happens with a satellite backhaul that uses just a regular solution that doesn't have acceleration? Well, the limited phone TCP window size plus the inherent satellite delay cause the smartphone speed degradation to go all the way down to 2 megabits per second, and this is in the typical satellite backhaul implementations, not of course with Capricorn. With Capricorn, we're seeing that embedded TCP acceleration, I'm saying embedded because we have the solution embedded within our product and within Capricorn, and it boosts the performance back to the 100 megabits per second, which is what the smartphones today are requiring and can achieve to give the end user the satisfactory user experience. So a satellite backhaul with Capricorn, with the embedded TCP acceleration, is what you need to be able to really deliver this our performance that is required in the fast networks of today that are moving data to the smartphones everywhere, including in the rural. So yes, market change brings MNO opportunity for 3G LTE over satellite, and here's just a summary of some of the things we were talking about on the screen. And I'd like to sum up by saying that SkyEdge 2C Capricorn makes the impossible possible, and I'd like to urge you all to seize the opportunity. Thank you very much to listening to us, and we will be now taking a few questions. Okay, I see here a good question for Yoram. Just 1 minute. When you mentioned 3G, are you referring to HSPA? Just 1 second.
Yes, of course. I mean, the UMTS, the 3G technology is based on something called UMTS. And when it was introduced, it has the maximum speed of 2 megabits per second, and that also that in limited area around the cell site, the node B site. But then came what is also called the generation 3.5, with high-speed download packet access and high-speed up packet access. So together they're called the HSPA, high-speed packet access, and it works at speeds at the beginning of 7 megabits per second, then 14, then more, 28, etc. So also going relatively high speed even compared to LTE, but not as high as LTE. But it doesn't matter. It's the same principle. If you have something near 30 megabits per second, again, the traffic from user or the multiple user that use the cell, the node B, so each one of them will use the time and the bandwidth for a short while and download what it needs and then nothing, because it's very high speed. And this is the reason we have to understand when comparing to the past. This is the reason that we actually have very few users at a certain time. If you look at 0.1 second of time and you monitor the traffic that is going on in the up direction or the down direction, you see that traffic of a single smartphone is asking for something, and after a very short time, nothing. So what you see is traffic coming from the smartphone. You see that 3 are using the cell, or 5 are using the cell, or 2, or 0, or 1, and this is in very short time. The changes it's over a very short time. So this 1 second, you have 5 users, and then 0 users for another second, and then 1 user. So this is called bursty. And for bursty traffic, exactly what we need is TDM, TDMA. So again, I'm saying it's true for LTE and it's true for 3.5G, which is high-speed packet access.
Okay, one minute here.
You see, there's a question here. Maybe I can do it. What question is?
Just 1 second, please. I'm trying to get a question here for Yoram.
What about TDM, multi-frequency TDMA? Is it not more efficient? So the answer.
Okay, there's a question here that I think it's obvious, but just in case other people were confused, it says, what about TDM, MF TDMA? Is it not more efficient? In other words, maybe there was a misunderstanding since we didn't say MF TDMA, but of course that's what we meant all the time. And yes, of course, MF TDMA is more efficient. That's what we meant. We were just abbreviating with TDMA. There's here another question. Explain the need for 200 megabits per second when the smartphone is limited to 100 megabits per second. Here, take this, please, Yoram.
So, well, the answer is that you have 100 megabits per second in a capability of the smartphone, but there were maybe 3 users at a time simultaneously using the Node B, or 4 or 5, and sometimes more. But let's say we have 3 users that want to download something, and they download at the speed of 30 megabits per second, or if they can download at the speed of 60 megabits per second. So if we have 200 megabits per second supported by our Capricorn, then we can support 60 megabits per second each when 3 people share the bandwidth. And again, they will finish the download very fast, and the bandwidth will be free very fast again for others. So that's why we need the MF-TDMA, multi-frequency time division multiple access, as the access in the upload direction, and of course for the download that I was talking about, 60 megabits per second download by 3 users. So the download is over the fixed bandwidth, high bandwidth carrier that is going from the RNC all the way to the node Bs. So this is called TDM.
Okay, thank you, Yoram. I see here a question about, wait a minute, do you see high-speed networks requiring satellite backhaul? So of course we do. We see many. We see 3G networks requiring satellite backhaul in South America, in places like Brazil and Colombia, and also in West Africa. And we see the need for LTE networks already now in Asia. So yes, we see this demand, and we think this is a very exciting market for us. And I'm looking here, there's a lot more questions asking very specific questions that I think we'll get back to people individually, things about availability, pricing, testing, etc. And we'll definitely get back to all of you. So I'd like to thank you very much for attending. This webinar will be posted on the website, the recording of the presentation as well as the actual slides that you're seeing. And also there was some requests here I see for additional collateral that we have prepared and will be posting shortly also on our website. So stay tuned for more exciting information about this topic and others, and we'd like to have you soon again on one of our webinar Wednesdays. Thank you very much for being with us.